22nd, 2020 meeting of the East Lansing Planning Commission. Mr. Haywood, would you please call roll?
Chairperson Bowman.
Here.
Vice Chair Boyle.
Here.
Cahill. Downs.
Here.
Kusler.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Watson. Williams.
Here.
And Wolf.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. You have in front of you an agenda for this evening's meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve that agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Kusler and seconded by Commissioner Downs. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries. In your packets, you also had a copy of the minutes, the draft minutes of the January 8th, 2020 meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
That's been moved by Commissioner Wolf and seconded by Vice Chair Boyle. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries as well. That moves us on to item 2A, committee reports. The Form-Based Code Committee has not met since our last commission meeting, but we are scheduled to meet this Friday at 11, to continue our work. And I believe you all received copies of, or notes regarding the upcoming work sessions that are going to continue through February, March, and then I think in May was the last one that's currently scheduled. So maybe check your calendars just to verify that you'll be able to make those. Any questions for the committee?
Well, just
Please,
just to confirm that, our first work session is 2 weeks from tonight, I believe.
That sounds
Is that
familiar.
right? The first Wednesday in February?
That sounds familiar, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's,
Yeah, February 4th.
February 5th or 6th or 4th, okay, could be.
One of those 3 days.
There we go.
It's the Wednesday. Sure.
That brings us on to item 3, staff reports. Oops.
7 p.m. meetings?
No, we're usually at 5:30 for this, yeah, for the work sessions. Yeah. Any other questions for or about, that's fine, about the Form-Based Code Committee? All right, thank you. Mr. Haywood, do you have any staff reports?
Yeah, just real quick to do a council recap. So last night, the city council scheduled consideration of the Oakwood Boundary Study, Ordinance 1446, for February 25th. They also scheduled a public hearing for the Hub 2 development on Bogue Street for the same night, and scheduled another public hearing for Ordinance 1462 to consider amendments to the East Village zoning district, also for February 25th. And they approved the special use permit for Provision Living, the senior housing development up on Abbott Road. And that's all I have.
Questions for Mr.
it's going to be
Haywood?
busy. February 20, is it February 25th?
25th, yes.
And so the changes to the zoning code for the East Village and the Hub are both public hearings on the
Correct.
same day?
Yep.
That makes good sense, actually.
Any other
That's all I
questions?
have.
Any other questions for Mr. Haywood? All right, then, that'll bring us on to item 4, commissioner announcements. And then item 5, communications from citizens. This is the time in our meeting when we'd invite members of the public to come forward and make comments on any item that is on our agenda or items that are not on our agenda. Typically, we'd ask that you hold your comments about new business public hearings until those are on the agenda, but we have no public hearings tonight, so if you're here to make comments on any of the old business, I would invite you to come forward now and make comments, or if you just have another issue that you'd like to raise with the commission, please come forward. And I'm seeing no one come forward, so we'll move on to say that there was no written communications received, and that'll move us on past public hearings to old business, item 7A. This is a site plan, an application from WREL LLC for the properties at 3118 and 3126 West Road to allow for the construction of a one-story, 20,382 square foot office building. Ms. Schmidt.
2 weeks ago, we held a public hearing on this project. There were a few house cleaning items that the Planning Commission had requested. Number one, you had requested elevations, the remaining elevations that were needed. Those were in your packet. Also, there was a question about the sidewalk, the 5-foot sidewalk on West Road. That will be required to be increased to 8 feet. And that has been included in the conditions of approval that are in your packet. Also, there was a discussion or question about the trash bin and sharing a trash bin. That will be required to have a screen around the trash bin, and it will have to meet the requirements of the city code. It will also, if they're going to share that parcel or that area for the trash bin, there will have to be an easement placed on the property for sharing. Another question came up was whether there was a sidewalk between the shared parking and the property at 3100 West Road. And there is an existing sidewalk, however, the plan shows it currently conflicting with 3 parking spaces at the south end of the property in this area. The applicant has provided a sketch showing how he would, in the final drawing, take care of that conflict. We've also updated your staff report. There's been no other change except for the update and the condition in your staff report. Condition 16 no longer states that there will need to be a sidewalk between the 2 buildings or the 2 shared properties, but it states that they will be required to take care of the conflict between the parking and the existing sidewalk. As I said, the sketch is showing how the applicant suggests taking care of that conflict. With that, I believe those were all of the items that came up during the Planning Commission public hearing. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from Ms. Schmidt? Very good. Commissioner Wolf?
Yeah, I have 2. One of them is about the electric vehicle charging station. I was looking at our ordinance about that, and the way I read it, it's a little tricky figuring out how to apply it to this. But the way I read it, we would be requiring 2 spaces for this, 2 chargers for this.
Okay.
And it's written to cover 2 circumstances. One is the expansion of existing parking, which this could be considered to be, and it's also written to cover a new project. And it's written to say, essentially, if you have more than 100 installed or required spaces, then you would have to have 2. And if you look at the table at the end, the zoning analysis in the staff report, it winds up with just over 100 spaces. So I guess what I'm asking is for you to look at that again and see what you think. I'm not 100% sure I'm reading it right either.
I'll take a look at
So
that.
I wasn't trying to resolve that tonight necessarily, but if you could look at that.
Definitely.
And then the second one is, I guess this is more of a commentary than anything, but last week or 2 weeks ago, I asked about the parking setback on the south side of this property. It's set back 0 feet from the lot line.
Correct.
And we talked about that, and
Right.
that's allowed in this case essentially because the 2 properties are part of the same site plan, I think is one way to express it. So
Correct.
it doesn't have to be set back the same as it would if it were adjoining a different site. But I noticed in the staff report on page 3, the bottom of page 3, it says the site lighting along the south property line, this is the very same area, is too intense, requiring a reduction in the proposed foot candles in this area to prevent excess light from spilling onto the neighboring property, which is, again, it's the same adjoining property. And it just seems a little odd that we, for the parking setback, we make an exception that allows it to not to have to follow it, but for lighting that we do not. And I realize it's not in the code, but
I think for that purpose, if you look at the foot candles on the property line, there's the edge of the building there, and it's more the lighting as it could impact the windows, shining in the windows of that building, because the building is actually pretty close to that area.
Okay, it must meet its setback already. It had to have been
Right.
built 15 feet, I think, from that sideline. But anyway, the
Correct.
point is, it's their building. Just like for the parking, it's
Right.
their adjoining lot, so if they have spillover into their own building, it seems like that's their issue rather than the city's issue. So it struck me as sort of an inconsistency in our ordinances. There's nothing we can do about it necessarily. I guess we have to enforce it as it's written, but
Good point.
that was it. Thanks.
Other questions for Ms. Schmidt? Okay, thank you. Is there anything the applicant would care to add to that or to the discussion? You're welcome to. I see that you're here, and I don't know that.
I'm fine.
I don't know that are there any questions for the applicant? It sounds like he's fine.
Glad to answer.
Okay, thanks. Just offer you that
I do
opportunity.
actually have one quick
Oh.
question. In the matter that was discussed earlier related to electric charging stations.
Yes.
You were gonna look into that to see
Yes.
if our review of the ordinance would require an additional charging station.
Correct.
If the review of the ordinance does show that we do in fact need that, would that be something that you guys would be willing to install as we continue to look at this project?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
if it's required. Can I just comment on the lighting?
Of course.
I appreciate what you said, and we did submit a new light plan that shows the intensity, and it really does not go into the windows now. It's limited just past the property line, so I don't think it's an issue at all. So we redid the site lighting plan to make sure that there would not be any conflict there. So, any other questions then? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do want to have one comment. I don't think the people that work for the city sometimes get enough appreciation. And I would like to say publicly that Darcy and all the people that we've worked with are just wonderful to work with. They give us good suggestions, and it's for our benefit as well as the community, and we appreciate it. I just wanted to say that.
We agree. Thank you. All right, then. Is there any discussion amongst the commission, or is there any further discussion amongst the commission? If not, then a motion would be in order. Commissioner Wolf?
I will move in the matter of the request from WREL LLC for site plan approval for the properties at 3118 and 3126 West Road to allow for the construction of a one-story, 20,382 square foot office building that we recommend approval to the city council, subject to the 17 conditions in the staff report.
There is a motion on the floor.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Wolf and seconded by Commissioner Downs to recommend to council the application before us. Is there any discussion on that motion?
If I could just get some clarification on the electric charging port, if the motion needs to be amended to include that, so if they do change it, that this motion stands, or if that's inherent already.
Yeah, I don't see that it's actually a condition at this point, nor do I know whether it would be or not.
Yeah, it is.
It's 13.
I'm not seeing it. There we go.
It's 13.
But the way I saw
Sure
that,
enough.
The city council could take care of that.
Sure.
Let staff figure out what it should be, and if it needs to be changed, they'll recommend it to city council at that time.
Perfect.
Yeah, it'll be in the recommendation before it goes to
Yeah,
council.
I have a note to look into that, and if it's something that's additional required, we would make that recommended additional or amendment to that condition to council.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Good question. Did I see another hand? Or is it
No, that
the
was the same question.
All right. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of recommending this application to City Council, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries. That moves us on to item 7B. This is ordinance 1480, an application to rezone Albert Avenue right-of-way, currently not, an area currently not zoned, and city parking lot number 4, which is parcel number 33-20-01-13-229-011, zoned C, community facilities, to B3, city center commercial district. Mr. Haywood?
Thank you again. This is a continuation from our conversation on January 8th during the public hearing. So the rezoning is for Lot 4, the city parking lot, and a portion of the Albert Avenue right-of-way that was created by the Park District project that realigned the street a little bit south, freed up some of the right-of-way space for future use, and putting that to good use, combining those properties, and exploring options for future development. Of course, Michigan State University Federal Credit Union is interested in the property. This rezoning would pave the way for the office use that they're proposing or will be proposing. And the proposed zoning district meets the master plan objectives and the future land use designation for the property. So with that, I would take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Haywood? Vice Chair Ball?
Question. I know this was covered before, but either didn't sink in or I didn't understand it. This wasn't a street that we're rezoning. It's just the right-of-way, so we don't have any abandonment of a public
That's
road.
an excellent question. That was, of course, a concern of ours, and we looked into that, and we did a title search and went back as far back as there were records and could not find any actual dedication of the land for a public street. So, which actually makes that process a lot easier. Then it just becomes kind of at-large city property. Gives us a lot more flexibility to market the property or sell it, that kind of thing. Yeah, so we don't have to do any abandonment of the property.
Thank you.
Or
Thanks
of
for
the
that.
right-of-way. Yep.
Other questions for Mr. Haywood? Any discussion amongst the commission then, as he essentially, as I said before, he's essentially representing the applicant? Well, then a motion would be in order. Vice Chair Boyle?
I would move that in the matter of ordinance 1480, a request from the city of East Lansing to rezone Albert Avenue right-of-way, which is not currently zoned, and city parking lot number 4, currently zoned C, community facilities, to B3, that we recommend city council approve ordinance 1480.
Second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Boyle and seconded by Commissioner Sullivan. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of recommending the ordinance 1480 to City Council, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, that motion carries. Moving us on to item 8, new business. We have none on our agenda. That moves us on to item 9, commissioner concerns. Any concerns amongst you all? All right, then.
Yeah, sure.
Vice Chair, please.
Since we're so early here, I'll bring up something I've been thinking about here. I'm wondering if other commissioners are aware of the project going on campus where MSU is adapting the former Shaw Lane Power Station into a new academic building. And they are building an addition to it, a massive addition that sort of surrounds it, actually. And the thing that's exciting about it, especially, well, the adaptive reuse is fantastic, but they are using an entirely new construction material. It's the first use of its kind in the state. And I've been reading about it over the last year in various other places. It's something called cross-laminated timber. It's a wood product, and it has enormous advantages over concrete and steel. In 2015, it was first put into the International Building Code as an approved material for buildings up to 18 stories. MSU's is about, I don't know, if it's maybe a 6-story building. I'm not sure the exact height on it. And I'm not going to go into all the, I'll mention that concrete and steel are both large contributors to greenhouse gases, to carbon emissions, the production of them, the mining of them, and so forth. And we have enormous capacity in this country to, in our managed forests, to do way more construction with wood than we are doing now. And this building material has been endorsed by the Nature Conservancy and any number of environmental groups. And so the reason I bring it up is I think it would be really exciting if we could get a project like that in East Lansing. And we sort of have a leg up here because we have MSU here, and they're building the building, and they're developing the experience with it. It has economic implications for Michigan because there are no cross-laminated timber facilities, production facilities in the middle of the country right now. They're primarily on the West Coast. So there could be a real opportunity for a new industry for Michigan, which also has the forests that could supply it. So I don't know what we can do about it. I'd like somehow to get discussion about it in the city. It's hard for us to get projects started. Developers are normally the ones who come with ideas about projects, and they typically have their own ways that they intend to build buildings. But I'm hoping maybe we could find some way to encourage this type of a building in the city. It would be nice if the credit union came in with that sort of a project, or if I had thought of this sooner, it might have been something we could have worked into the RFPs for the evergreen properties. It may be too late for that kind of thing, but I'd sort of like to get it on people's minds and see if there's some way to do something about this.
Yeah, you can certainly mention it to them.
And if you search for, MSU calls it their STEM building. It's a sort of an integrated science teaching building. I don't know exactly, they haven't said exactly what departments they're moving into it, but so if you search for MSU STEM building or cross-laminated timber MSU, you find numerous stories about it. And you should go drive by it. It's a very impressive sight to see.
And it does look like the whole structure is being built of wood. I mean,
Right.
when you first see it, my husband had mentioned it. He
Yeah,
said,
so
what
you've
is
seen
this
it.
building? It looks like it's being built of wood instead of steel.
Right, it looks like sort of like an old-fashioned timber post and beam
Exactly.
building, but on an immense scale.
Yeah, much higher than you would
And
go.
I think a lot of that won't be visible necessarily when it's completed. You can see the structure still right now, but. And I know some of it will be visible inside the building. They're going to use the structure as part of you'll be able to see it when you're inside.
Thank you.
So,
I had an opportunity to tour it this past summer.
did you?
So, yeah, and it's really quite lovely. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's really going to be pretty impressive. Any other commissioner concerns? Well, then a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second?
Then moved by Commissioner Kusler and seconded by Commissioner Wolf. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, the motion carries, and we are adjourned at 26. Thank you. And there we go. What is that? 7:26. 7:26.